Hi, I'm Tasha with One Big Happy Life on behalf of the Financial Diet, and this is the Lifestyle Fix brought to you by Skillshare. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing 5 things that you should do before you make any major life move. Now, here on the Lifestyle Fix, I've talked a bit about some of the major life changes that I have made over the course of my life. Just to name a few, so I left my parents' house when I was 18 and joined the military. When I was 24, I sold my house and moved my then husband and child halfway up the East Coast so that I could go to law school. Then we moved halfway across the country to Texas, a place I had never lived before, for me to start my job after law school. And now my family and I live in DC, a place, again, that I've never lived. And we moved here for work also. So, yes, major transitions left and right in my life. And I've learned a few things along the way that I'm going to be sharing with you today to help you out in your life transitions. Number one, make sure that you know your why. In other words, why are you doing what you're doing and how is it going to benefit your life? It can be really tempting to hop on the very first idea that comes to mind to help us transform our lives, or hop on to the very first opportunity that we come across because we're like, well, what if nothing better ever comes along? But before you jump on that opportunity, I'd love for you to take a step back and think through that opportunity and how it fits into your life and your priorities. Sometimes we can get so focused on the things that are going on in our lives right now that we don't like, that when an opportunity comes along for us to get away from that thing that we dislike, we jump on it and potentially ignore any red flags. And so, by taking a moment to really look at that opportunity and assess whether it fits within your life goals, your vision for your life, what your preferences are, and if it's going to get you closer to ultimately where you want to be, is super important before you make any commitment or next steps. So, to use an example from my own life, after I had my son, I was working at a law firm and I was working full time. And as far as law firm hours go, it was pretty okay. And I really enjoyed the work that I was doing, but I hated my long commute to DC and the lack of flexibility in my schedule. So I decided that I was going to look for another job. And I found another job and I took it immediately. I really didn't ask any questions. I just assumed that it would give me the flexibility that I wanted. Well, it turns out that that job was a heavy travel job. And, in my defense, they did not make it clear just how much I was going to be traveling. I expected to be traveling during the day, but that I would be home most of the time. Well, this job had me traveling for entire weeks at a time away from my newborn baby that I was still breastfeeding. And it was a disaster. It was by far the worst job that I've ever worked, not just because of the travel, but because of the bosses that I had. So I jumped out of the proverbial flame and into the fire. And if I had taken more time, asked more questions to make sure that I fully understood what was going to be involved with the travel and followed up on some of the red flags that kind of came up during the interview, I would not have taken that opportunity and I would have waited for a better one to come along. So just make sure that you fully examine that opportunity and that it's going to get you where you want to go in life and that you're making that decision for the right reasons, right? Because it can be very easy to hop on to an opportunity because it's incredibly prestigious and because, it'll make our parents proud, it'll make our spouse happy because we're getting this promotion, but in reality, it's not filling our cup. So just step back, make sure that the opportunity is even right for you in the first place before you start looking to rearrange your life to accommodate it. Once you have a pretty good idea that yes, this is an opportunity that you definitely want to pursue, then the second step is to start researching any costs associated with this big life move. Now, this can work for anything, whether it's having children, getting married, moving across the country for a job, traveling the world for a year and not working at all. All of these things have costs associated with them. and you can do research to figure out exactly how much they're going to cost. And again, you know me, I am a fan of the 1 year spending plan, which you can get by heading over to onebighappylife.com/budget if you don't have one already. Now, this is especially true for long-term changes, right? So if you're going to be changing jobs, if you're planning on saving for something big, whether it's getting married, buying a new house, or having kids, a 1 year spending plan can help you see for a full year at a time exactly how much this transition will affect your finances. So, how do you research these costs? Well, thankfully, we have the internet. And so there are a lot of people out there who will post various costs of things, like how much does it cost to get married? Well, there are ranges that you can use. Or you can even look up specific florists and specific venues and call them and see how much their rates are. Similarly, if you're moving to a new city or to a new country, start by looking into how much those moving costs are and what your options are for moving. Are you going to do a DIY move and rent your own truck? Well, how much is gas? How much are boxes? You can research all of those things. Then, when it comes to the cost of living in your new city, look at the neighborhoods. Figure out just, generally which areas of the city you'd love to live in, and then what are the rental or housing costs in those areas. Then, to dig even deeper into how much your utilities will cost, all you have to do is call up specific apartments and ask them what utilities typically run for a unit of the similar size that you would want if you were going to move there. So then once you have all of those numbers in place, you can plug them into your 1 year spending plan and you can see how much it's going to cost you, which will also give you a good idea of what size salary you can accept from moving over to the new place. Because if you're moving from a higher cost of living area to a lower cost of living area, that might involve somewhat of a pay cut. But because the cost of living is lower, you might actually end up with more money in your pocket in the long run because of your housing and other living expenses savings. Number 3, spend some time thinking about the potential friction points that you might encounter in your new life. For most of us, when we start thinking about a major life change, we get really excited about all of the brand new positive things that change will bring into our lives. And sometimes we forget to think about some of the, not necessarily difficulties, but problem areas that might arise that we'll want to have to think around. So, for example, when we lived in Philadelphia, we were a 15-minute train ride away from our jobs. And so we went down to a single car. Our daughter at that time was 12, and so the bus stop was right across the street from our house. So she would just walk straight across the street to get to school. And we would leave her in the morning, and she would be fine on her own because she was old enough. And so then we moved to DC, and we were a 90-minute commute via public transportation away from work. And we had a baby on the way. So it was 2 major life transitions happening at the same time. And yes, we were very excited by the new job opportunities we had and our new living situation because we were able to buy a house. But now we have not just an independent preteen, but a baby to take into consideration. And how do we make sure that we're able to still be present for our children while we're commuting basically 3 hours a day? So we didn't really think that through until we got here and realized that, hey, we have a couple hurdles that we need to figure out how we're going to leap over those on a day-to-day basis so that our lives can continue to run smoothly. So one of the things that we did was we split our schedules so that Joseph was going into work really early because I couldn't go into work early. I was working at a law firm, so the earliest I could go in was 8 or 9 a.m. and I would often have to stay there till 6 p.m. so then I wasn't getting home till 7:30. So I was there in the mornings, and then Joseph was there in the afternoons because he was home by 3 p.m. So he was there to greet Alexis when she came home. Then when we had our son, we did end up getting a nanny because daycare is so expensive here that it ended up being a similar price for us to nanny share. And so then that took the pressure off of us so we could both go into work early and then both get home early so that we could be with the kids. Now, I wish that we had thought a little bit more about that before we moved here, because maybe we would have have opted to live a little bit closer into the city so that even though, yes, it would be more expensive, it wouldn't have put as much pressure on us with our commutes being away from the kids, especially our youngest one who was just a baby at the time. So as you're thinking about making these major life transitions, think about the potential pitfalls that could come up, the changes that will happen in your life because of this that you then need to account for in this new life, because it could end up costing you more money or more time. So you definitely want to make sure that you're also factoring that in to your 1 year spending plan so you have a realistic view of what this new life will look like. Number 4, before moving forward with that new opportunity, consider the alternatives. So it can be really tempting to just jump into that new thing because it seems like it's just what you've been waiting for, right? But I've already talked about how it's really easy to look at new opportunities with rose-colored glasses and miss out on the warning signs. But the other thing is that when you make a choice in your life to do this or that thing, you're foregoing opportunities to do other things. So before you say yes to that new and exciting opportunity, make sure that you think about, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? And if I say no to this, what could I potentially say yes to? And by stopping to ask yourself these questions and actually brainstorm these alternatives, you're more likely to be able to make a well-informed decision. Number 5, have an exit strategy. So no matter how well prepared we are, how much we research, how much we crunch the numbers to make sure that we are making a good decision, sometimes things don't work out the way that we think that they will. So it's always a good idea to plan in advance for what your options will be if you decide that you need to make a pivot away from this decision that you've made. Now, this doesn't mean that you should be all doom and gloom and just always expect the worst and for this new opportunity to not work out, but you just need to be prepared, right? Because you might have to pivot or you might want to pivot. You might decide after a few months of this experience that it's actually not what you expected or not what you thought it would be, or it doesn't further your life goals. And that is okay. And so what you want to do in those instances is already know, well, what are my options if this doesn't work out? So 2 perfect examples of this are wills and prenups. So no one expects or wants to have a divorce, and no one expects or wants to die prematurely. But it's always a good idea to have those documents in place so that you're protected and your heirs are protected and your significant other is protected in case those things actually do happen. The other good reason to always have an exit strategy is because that feeling of not having any options can lead you to stay stuck in a place that you don't want to be. But being aware of what your options are and being willing to take those options, that's a muscle that needs to be flexed and built over time. So once you get into the habit of always knowing that you have an alternative and constantly figuring out what those alternatives are, you can make sure that you're not staying stuck in a life that you don't really want to live. Now that you know how to plan out your next life move to make sure it's a good one, let's talk about a great place to learn some new things. Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes in design, business, technology, and more. Premium membership gives you unlimited access to high-quality classes on essential topics, so you can improve your skills, unlock new opportunities, and do the work you love. Looking to brush up on your lifestyle photography skills so you can deck out those empty walls of yours? Check out Marie Forsberg's class, Lifestyle Photography, Capturing Inspiring Visual Stories, where she teaches you how to capture stunning stories in a styled yet natural way. Click the link in the description box to join the millions of students already learning on Skillshare today and to take advantage of a special offer just for TFD viewers. Get 2 months of unlimited access to over 25,000 classes for free. Act now so you don't miss out and start learning today. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell and tune in here every single Friday for another new episode of The Lifestyle Fix. See you next week.